Hey everybody, Playtendoguy here, and welcome to my review of Detroit Become Human. Robots rising up, developing emotions, and betraying their human masters is a sort of sci-fi tale that regularly does the rounds, with Channel 4's recent TV show Humans proving the subject matter can still make for good TV. But now David Cage and his team at Quantic Dream are back with their unique way of storytelling with their own new game, Detroit Become Human. A game that is their own take on the subject matter about androids feeling human emotions and rising up. But how did they do? Let's find out. Those who have played any other Quantic Dream games like Heavy Rain or Beyond Two Souls will have a good idea on how Detroit plays, as Detroit Become Human is more or less the same when it comes to the gameplay department. It's the same sort of linear story-driven game that has served the developers well for years now. The story of Detroit Become Human is set in a futuristic version of Detroit in the year 2038, and the world is a very different place to what it is today, as mankind has created robotic android servants to help with people's everyday menial tasks. This great technology has, for all its positives, had plenty of negatives, such as the working class has suffered due to the inclusion of androids replacing the workforce, driving up employment. It all creates a dystopian world that many forms of media has told a similar story before. But to the game's credit, it does try really to make it feel like a believable world with a strong and likeable cast of characters, and the constant feeling that Detroit is on the verge of a civil war. The main story feels stronger and more developed thanks to the help of the game's three leading playable characters. Talking of these characters, we have Kara, a maid-like android for a troubled single father and his daughter. Unfortunately for Kara and the young girl, the father is a very nasty and dangerous person who isn't afraid to hit his young daughter. The threat the father causes Kara to snap out of her programming and become a deviant, and she runs away with the young girl to try and find a better life. Then we have Marcus, who's a house servant for an elderly painter called Carl, and life is good for Marcus. Well, that's until him and Carl comes home from an event, only for Marcus's life to change forever. He ends up on a literal scrap heap for androids, and by some miracle he survives, albeit very injured. He eventually escapes and joins an android group called Jericho, and Marcus and the members of Jericho will try and make an uprising to try and make people see that androids are people too. Then we have my favourite character, Connor, and he's a detective android sent to the Detroit Police Department by the android creators CyberLife. Connor's story revolves around him trying to complete his mission, which is to find out why so many androids are turned into deviants. These three characters are all very different in their own right, each with their own personal goals, and it all helps to develop this strong fiction, as eventually their individual storylines overlap and join into one. And thankfully my early worries of the game's story would fall apart due to the three different storylines on offer is non-existent. It all works really well. Now on to the gameplay now. Wow, what little there is here, as Detroit is another linear story-driven game, which sees you spending around 80% of the game watching cutscenes, choosing dialogue options and QTEs. There are occasions when you can walk around and explore a small area around you, and you can discover some cool secrets and other ways to complete the chapter, but that's it. See, the thing with Detroit is, at first you may think 50 quid's a lot of money for a linear story-driven game, as once you completed the game, there's normally very little replayability with these sort of games, but boy, the game seriously surprises you with its replayability. No two playthroughs of Detroit are the same, as there's so many different variables for each levels, and it can dramatically change the way the story plays out. For starters, each of the three playable characters can die, and once they die, they're dead for good, and their stories come to a halt. Same goes for the supporting cast characters like Hank and the members of Jericho. They can all die, and it all has a serious impact on the story, which is again very impressive. But it isn't just characters that can change the story. You can complete each chapter in many different ways. Take the opening hostage level. You have to save the girl from the deviant. You can complete this level several different ways. You can go straight into the hostage negotiations with no info on the situation at all, shoot the deviant, sacrifice yourself to save the girl, or you could search the area to build up evidence to help you with the case to save both the girl and the deviant. For the first level, it's very impressive for the many different ways of completing this chapter, and this one is one of the more basic chapters in the game, as later chapters will have many different layers and you'll be crisscrossing characters, and it's mind-boggling how many different variables are at play here. Your decisions really do affect how the story plays out. From your dialogue choices to interacting with items, it's amazing how little details can affect how the story comes out. As you go through the game, you'll meet plenty of supporting casts that will join the 3 playable characters on their journey, and each of these characters has a relationship chart, and your decisions can affect how they react to you. An initially cold android could turn out to be a love interest, and Hank, the brilliantly written detective that joins Connor in his investigations, the relationship between them could be rocky and rather unpleasant, or on the other hand could be a buddy cop drama. It's amazing how different and in-depth this game is. Talking about the length, Detroit took me around a good 10 to 12 hours on my first run through, and that's with all the main characters alive till the end. But considering, as I said, the huge amount of ways you can complete a chapter, the different ways the story plays out, and the extra hidden chapters that you won't see, there's a huge cornucopia of stuff to do here. You're talking around a good 40 hours to see everything on offer here, which is astounding for a linear story-driven game. Now, this isn't something I wouldn't normally talk about in a review, but this game's menu really deserves some applause for how interactive it is. See, every time when you boot up the game on the main menu screen, you'll see an android called Chloe who will talk to you and comment on various things like how was your day, to that was a short break if you close the game and relaunch it. She even tricked me by saying my save data was corrupt, which had me worried for a second. It's a bit freaky at first, but it's certainly a clever inclusion that does make a lasting impression on the game. Presentation-wise, the game looks astounding with some of the best and most detailed human-looking character models about. The facial animations continue to impress throughout the game, and it really does look like you're watching a movie at times. It isn't just the characters and all, the impressive future version of Detroit itself is also a beautiful looking vista that really shines with some very impressive lighting and textures that really do bring this world to life. Audio-wise, the game should be applauded. Not only is the voice acting absolutely top-notch with all the cast giving it their all, but the soundtrack is different for each playable character. Quantic Dream brought in 3 different musicians for each of the characters. Take Connor for example, his soundtrack is very electronic to go with his cold and mechanical behaviour, whilst Kara's soundtrack on the other hand has a sort of soft and emotional music to go with her quest to be free with the young girl. It's a great soundtrack and it's a rather clever inclusion that really does hammer home that 3 different characters are individuals. Conclusion time now, and Detroit Become Human is quite easily Quantic Dream's best game yet, with a strong if slightly cliché tale about robotic androids developing emotions and rising up for equal rights. Its tale features a strong, likeable and diverse cast that all shines thanks to the superb production values, but where the game really deserves its praise is in its wide range of outcomes for each situation to make each playthrough increasingly different to the last. Detroit is one of the best interactive story games of this generation and is well and truly worth getting. So that's why I'm giving Detroit Become Human an 8.5 out of 10 with a title of great. Thank you for watching my review, like, rate and subscribe, and until next time, happy gaming. Bye!